Hey there, Legal Tea listeners. This is your host, Jenny Roselle. We are back to estate planning and the rich and famous, where we chat about celebrities and their estate planning, or lack thereof. Today's episode is on John Dorrance, who at the end of last episode, I made an oopsies, I made a mistake. I referred to him as the founder of Campbell's Soup Company. Forgive me, he was not the founder. I actually think someone gave me the idea to do a Legal Tea episode on John, and either they told me he was the founder or I just flat made that up. But nonetheless, John was not the founder. John's history with Campbell Soup Company makes you feel like he's the founder because it's so deep-rooted. And before we get to that, as I always do on these episodes, I'm going to go over some background information on John, kind of personally and professionally first, and then we will dive into what transpired after John's death with his estate, which will come in just a few minutes. So John first. Let's go over how John even got affiliated with the company, and we have to rewind some time. So according to Campbell's own website, Campbell's Soup Company was founded in 1869 by two gentlemen, Joseph Campbell and Abraham Anderson. Back then, it was founded as Anderson and Campbell, but later became Campbell's Soup Company. Now, by 1894, about 30-ish years later, both original founders, Joseph and Abraham, had retired. And a gentleman by the name of Arthur Dorrance, which you should recognize his last name, took the lead as president in 1894. Arthur's nephew, John, yes, that John, who is not yet leading the company, because Arthur still was, and John invented the process of condensing soup in 1897, which, as their website explains, quote, made the soups more affordable for families while preserving the quality of the ingredients, end quote. Now, John was actually a chemist by training, having earned his doctorate. So technically, he was Dr. John Dorrance. In 1914, Arthur Dorrance retired, and John took the lead, becoming the president of the company. Shortly after becoming president, he actually ended up buying out the Campbell family and became the sole owner of the company. Now, more personally speaking, according to his Wikipedia page, John was married, wife's name was Ethel, and together they had 5 children: Eleanor, Ethel, yes, I know that was her mother's name as well, but a daughter named Ethel, Margaret, Charlotte, and John Jr., which he went by Jack. So Eleanor, Ethel, Margaret, Charlotte, and Jack. About 16 years after John took over at Campbell's, he sadly passed away on September 21st, 1930 due to heart disease, and he passed away in his home in New Jersey. After his death, an estate plan was located, and according to Time magazine, he had a 35-page last will and testament, and that will was read out loud to his heirs. And my goodness, it was a bit of a surprise, at least to me, to learn about. First, his only son, John Jr., Jack, got his library, his grandfather clock, and wait for it, 1/4 of the estate, even though John's wife Ethel and John's other 4 siblings, the other 4 kids were all living. John's wife, Ethel, received another 1/4 share. So Jack got a 1/4 share, his wife Ethel got a 1/4 share, and his 4 daughters, Eleanor, Ethel, Margaret, and Charlotte, each received a 1/8 share. So if you do the math, I'm not a big math person, so I had to dumb it down for my brain. Basically, 1/2 of John's estate went to his wife and son, and the other half went to his 4 daughters. What I was personally a little surprised about was how much Junior, Jack, got compared to everyone else. He got the exact same as John's own wife. So fast forward time as people aged and got married, had families, etc. more people became a part of the John Dorrance family, of course. Now, since Jack, the son, got such a significant portion of the company, as a CNBC article stated, quote, stayed most tightly through Jack's immediate offspring, end quote. Jack, who passed away in 1989, left a wife and 3 children, another John, that's a third John, who went by Ippy, Ippy, Mary Ann Bennett. And he also had 8 grandchildren, all at the time of his passing. So wife, 3 children, 8 grandchildren. Now, Mary Ann Bennett, according to that 2018 CNBC article, hold a significant portion of the company. They're both still living today, though Ippy, as the one was nicknamed, sold his part of the company in 1996 and moved to a different country, Ireland, if you care to know. Now, another child of John, Eleanor, had 2 daughters, Dorrance, who went by Dodo, and Hope. Dodo somewhat recently died in 2017, but left behind 3 children, 2 sons, 1 daughter. Hope, on the other hand, is still living today, so she continues to hold her part of the company. For the other 3 children of John, Ethel, Margaret, and Charlotte, I honestly could not find much about them, at all, about their children, their families, ownership interests. So I don't have a lot to report about the rest of them. But honestly, John died in 1930. A lot has happened naturally between the family and what has happened over time with the ownership interest of Campbell's Soup Company. Some of the articles I read online gave details about specific percentages of ownership. But at this point, especially because we're multiple generations down the line from John, it is really difficult to tell who owns how much at this point. So just know there is a portion of the company that remains in the family, but there is a significant portion that has been sold to parties outside the company too. Now, another thing I wanted to touch on with John's estate was taxes. And boy, there's some juicy stuff out there. So according to his Wikipedia, after John's death, a lot of litigation happened regarding his estate and taxes. And it all had to do with what his domicile, what his residence was for tax purposes. And even more specifically, estate and inheritance tax purposes. Essentially, when I boil it down, 2 states, Pennsylvania and New Jersey, both tried to claim that John was domiciled or resided in their state. And they were both claiming it because they wanted to be able to claim that they were entitled to the taxes from John's estate. You may be wondering why or how is that possible? Well, an article on Quimby shares a summary of the case, which I think perfectly explains why these 2 states or how these 2 states had kind of an equal footing for claiming John's residence, domicile. So it says, quote, John T. Dorrance was born in Pennsylvania. After his education, he became employed in New Jersey. There, he was immensely successful as the head of Campbell's Soup Company. Between 1911 and 1925, Dorrance and his wife lived in a country home in New Jersey with their children. In November 1925, Dorrance, his wife, and their 4 children moved to a much larger, luxurious estate in Pennsylvania known as Woodcrest. The family lived at Woodcrest. The family went to school there, and their social lives centered around Woodcrest. Now, Dorrance commuted to work in New Jersey. Dorrance continuously owned the property in New Jersey, where his mother and sister lived from 1926 until their deaths in 1928 and 1929. Many of Dorrance's friends and acquaintances believed he was a Pennsylvania resident after 1925. Dorrance, however, took measures to claim a New Jersey domicile, such as executing formal documents to that effect, on account of New Jersey's favorable inheritance and estate laws, end quote. So that's a mouthful. But basically, what I'm saying is he had his fingers in both of these states, if you can't tell. So what ended up happening? Both the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania and the Supreme Court of New Jersey both held that John was domiciled in each of their respective states, which meant that John's estate was required to pay estate taxes in both states. And naturally, the estate was like, what the heck? That's not fair. And they sought relief from the United States Supreme Court. Yes, like the United States Supreme Court. Unfortunately for them, the request for the review was denied, which is just a nice, easy way to say, we're not hearing your case. Yeah, they can do that. So with all the back and forth, and to spare you the really boring legal process and the legal analysis details, John's estate ended up paying both states' tax bills, which is super, super, super rare. In fact, I found a publication by the National Tax Association, which was published in 1940, that referenced John's estate in the Battle of the States, Pennsylvania and New Jersey. In it said, talking about John and the estate, it said, they are the people who paid, instead of 15 million or 16 million, about 32 million. And that payment seemed to shock the conscience of not only the man on the street, but the so-called experts. So yeah, it was surprising to a lot of people, to say the very least. If you honestly enjoy learning about this sort of stuff, this episode took me a long time to research and prepare for, because there is so much out there regarding his estate and taxes. So dive into that rabbit hole, my friends, if you want to learn more. Let's shift to a couple things that we can quickly learn from this, because it is always important for me, for these episodes to be able to learn something, from them. So 2 things come to mind regarding John's estate that we can learn from. First, this episode reminds me of something I commonly hear from clients about wanting to keep a business or a farm and a family for generations, or as my clients would like to have it, forever and ever and ever and ever. Well, forever and ever and ever and ever is impossible. There is a little thing called rule against perpetuities that the bar exam loves to test us lawyers on. And it basically prevents something from staying in a family forever. That's the gist of it. For a long, long time, like generations, sure, that's easy. But forever and ever is literally not allowed, thanks to that weird thing called the rule against perpetuities. So as we can see with Campbell's Soup Company, various family members have sold or transferred their share for whatever personal, financial, whatever reason. And eventually you can imagine a share of a business or a farm getting in the hands of someone that you may not want to have involved. Think like maybe your great, 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 great grandson has an addiction, or your great, 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 great granddaughter that's in and out of jail. And all your other fine and dandy family members have to deal with them as a fellow owner or whatever. So just use this story about John and what's happened as a bit of a reality check that, if you say you want something to stay in the family forever and ever, well, first of all, that's impossible, but there really could be serious issues down the road with that goal. So just something to keep in mind. Now, secondly, and much more quickly, the whole double tax thing, I can promise you it's nearly unheard of. And there are certainly ways to prevent that from happening, such as, written expression and documentation of someone's domicile, for starters. So if this kind of feels like it hit home, maybe you have property in different states or whatever, just be sure to bring this up with your estate attorney to make sure that you're protected from something like this. Alrighty, let's wrap this episode up and shift to a sneak peek of next week. Next week, we're back to a cautionary tale episode where we talk about real life clients, real life cases that I or my office have worked on, or maybe they're just generally good things to know and be aware of so that you do not slip up and turn into a cautionary tale one day. Well, next week, I don't really have a sneak peek because I haven't even decided what I'm going to blab about. So I guess I say a sneak peek and it's not a sneak peek at all, besides that it's a cautionary tale. So you'll just have to tune in to find out what I talk about, I guess. So until then, legal tea listeners, take care and be well.